सवैया चौथ जीते इन्हीं के प्रसाद इन्हीं के प्रसाद सुदान करे अक अवगटार इन्हीं के प्रसाद इन्हीं की कृपा पुण्य धाम भरे इन्हीं के प्रसाद सो विद्यालय इन्हीं की कृपा सब संत मरे नहीं की कृपा के सजे हम हैं नहीं पोसो गरीब करोड़ मरे।
वाहेगुरु जी का खालसा, वाहेगुरु जी की fateh. Have you noticed the latest trend among many of the Western Sikh youth today who profess liberalism as their creed rather than Sikhi? They criticize and vilify all the missile sardars of the Dal Khalsa who took Raakhi. They call it a protection racket, as if Khalsa Raaj was built by Ravi Khan pulling a whole Sikh empire and good vibes out of his langar bucket for Sulle. The reality is different, way more different than such self professed liberals care to or want to accept. Nation building or state building does not happen without the collection of any tax, no matter what the circumstance. The practice is as old as time itself. Whenever, wherever humans have collected together and established a state, it has basically been because of two things. One, security. Two, and security to pursue their own modes of happiness within the confines of whatever cultural and legal mores that state and its host society decides upon. Let's be practical for a moment then. Signing a document or professing loyalty to a state in any form or way does not really mean we're loyal to the state or the state is loyal to us. So, money is essentially what binds us all together, the state and us. Money or whatever is substituted for income and wealth. Obviously, such reality and dynamics of power are not something our liberal idiots comprehend or want to comprehend. They actually believe that Khalsa Raj is and was historically utopian. No tax, nothing. But this is exactly why liberalism always loses to reality as we're seeing today in the West. It is full of bullshit dreams. Reality does not run on such feel good sentiments or visions. It runs on pragmatism. There is a Sakhi that Guru Gobind Singh Ji was once challenged by an Islamofascist Kaji Sulla on the nature of miracles. Bhai, Chara lot. Yeah, you can get right out of here now because, obviously for you, Sulle are all praiseworthy. The Guru pointed out that there are three miracles that Islam does not want to accept. The sword, because of the security it provides, and it can be used against Muslims. The Guru did not mince his words. The state, symbolized by the king, because of the power it wields. It's actually personified by the king. And yes, it is the king's duty to protect his subjects from aggressors, even if those are Muslims. Money, because of its ability to unite, divide, and finance whatever one sets their mind to do with money. And yes, it can be used against Sulle, who are usually aggressors. The state actually unites all three in a way: security, power, and wealth. Security comes from the leadership of the state enrolling a select number of its citizens to protect it. Power is what the state's leadership wields for the society that forms it. Now, where does the money come from? Right? If the money is so vital, where does it come from? From the citizens. They have to pay tax. Money unites state and citizen, friend and foe, the conqueror and his empire. This is all done by money. Money, wealth, finance, whatever you call it, it is paid by the people who reside within the state because it can secure their safety through the power they devolve on it. Sure, some might argue about the divine right of kings, but that is not in terms of what the state should look like. But what gives the state the right to exist? Its legitimacy. That is what the divine right of existence is for, and not to control taxation or whatever. Money is the vital ingredient for the state after authority. Authority is abstract, but it is embodied by the army and weaponry. It is money, however, which is the state's life breath. When the state, or the state as it is being built, takes such money, it is called tax. When the Dal Khalsa took it while building the Sikh state, our idiots call it a protection racket. If that was a protection racket, then the government of every state is the biggest gangster because, well, isn't taxation a protection racket after all? So, what was Raakhi? Yes, it was a protection racket, but because the Dal Khalsa was building a state and even ensuring the functioning of the Sikh state, it was building, shouldn't it be called a protection tax? You know, that change in terminology? Because come to think about it, what is the liberal criteria to differentiate between the Sikh state and the non Sikh state? And if the state is indeed a state, then why try differentiating between the fundamental, the core nature of both? Wasn't the Sikh state also built by Sikh society for its security? Essentially, it was the drive and necessity for Sikhi and future generations of Sikhs that culminated in the establishment of the Sikh state. Right? That's what security was, the catalyst for building the Sikh state. It was also something foreseen by Guru Nanak, who mandated that the Sikhs become Khalsas and then leaders, that they dominate in human affairs to show the world how to truly live as Akal Purakh desires them to. Right? So, why then do we dismiss Raakhi? Or why then do we allow these liberal idiots to dismiss Raakhi as a protection racket? Now, what is the history of Raakhi? How did it come about, and what is the difference between Raakhi, the Sulla Jizya, and the Maratha Chauth? So, here is Endu Banga, a Sikh historian. Now, these are her words. Raakhi did serve as a prelude to territorial occupation, but not as a phase. Territorial occupation and Raakhi could be established by one and the same chief at one and the same time in two different areas. Raakhi was thus a transitional arrangement existing side by side with territorial occupation. The areas once brought under Raakhi were often, but not always, actually occupied and directly administered sooner or later. So, okay, seeing her point, yes, Misl Sardars and their Misldars and warriors occupied a territory and then put it under Raakhi. But Raakhi was transactional, it was a two-way thing. And in a time where the existing state systems were fast unraveling, the Sikhs set up their own alternative. Now, of course, the argument it was a protection racket could have made sense if there was an existing state that actually provided for the people and then the missiles muscled their way in illegally and unfairly. But there was nothing like that at the time. The Sulle Mughals were unraveling, having overtaxed the working class in Punjab, overtaxed all the farmers as well. The Sanatan Vedic Hindu high caste had joined in. If anything, theirs was the pure blackmail. Now, these liberal idiots are always crying on about, oh, look how we defeated the tyrannical Mughals. Yeah, then why are you trying to justify the Mughal taxation by calling the Sikh alternative a protection racket? So, as far as the Sanatan Vedic Hindus and the Muslims are concerned at the time, in the 18th century, overtaxed the people. But of course, because they could say they were the state, they could justify it legally, because might makes right. And if the people were not able to cough up the money, what would happen then? You just go and rape their children like Muhammad raped Aisha or Brahma tried raping his daughter. So, what was Raakhi then? Right? Now, Banga cites several sources, among them Gupta and Cunningham, where the Sardars sat down, like these sources show us, that the Sardars sat down with the village chiefs and town leaders to decide what the Raakhi would be. Usually, it was one-fifth. The Misldars used to visit annually and throw down a blanket upon which a Raakhi was paid in the form of goods or produce or gold. For this reason, it was also sometimes called Kambali. Now, in times of distress and famine, The Raakhi was increased to one tenth or more, but this was rare and one off. Now, Banga does not build her arguments on emotions alone as the liberals do. She builds them on contemporary observations. Obviously, in this era of multiple truths, you can argue, well, whose truth is she exactly using? But then again, can multiple individuals saying the same thing all be united by some retarded conspiracy? Like the boomers would say, oh no, this is Brahmanism, but never actually tell us how Brahmins infiltrated just about every non Sikh source as well. Regarding Rakhi, we have the words of James Brown, the Ibratnama, the Persian Ibratnama, George Forrester, and even Cunningham. So these were men and groups of intellectuals who traveled through the Punjab and either saw Rakhi in action or inquired about it from the locals who paid it. And contrary to popular opinion, Sikhs themselves were not exempt from it, or they had a lower rate applied to them. They paid the same as others. Why? Because they were also part of the Sikh state. When a territory agreed to pay Rakhi, the conquering Misl Sardar became its guardian. The way the system worked was that as soon as Rakhi was received or an agreement and arrangement made, the Sardar would make the area over to a Misldar to administer. The Misldar would position their warriors around the area to ensure no external aggressor harried it. On the other hand, these warriors would also act as an internal police force, often imposing a total ban on Sanatan Vedic Hindu caste and Sulla Sharia. The people would then be left to their devices to farm, to cultivate, to produce. They would also act as spies for the Dal Khalsa. Muslim, Hindu, and British observers would note that because they paid Rakhi, the villagers would be protected. Sardars, Misaldars, and even their families would die defending these individuals who were tax paying citizens of their Khalsa led state. And more importantly, Rakhi could not be paid in women, children, or anything else. Obviously, defiance was punished, but integrity respected. If an area was truly unable to pay Rakhi, it would be deferred to until the next time. Following Baba Banda Singh Bahadur's rules, constant reviews were undertaken by the Misaldars to decide how much revenue was actually payable to the state, to the Sikh state that is, under the prevailing environmental and economical conditions. If it was felt and proven that the people were in danger of being overtaxed, amounts were reduced. And the greatest evidence that this practice was successful, the historical record. Throughout Jalandhar and extending to Majha and Malwa, multiple territories opted to submit to the Sikhs despite previously paying taxation to Sanatan Vedic Hindu and Muslim rulers. Even when the Dal Khalsa was forced to retreat from certain locations, these territories would willingly resubmit to the Sikhs when they came back in power. Even if Rakhi was a protection racket, it was the best protection racket for the people in the eyes of many European observers. In 1784, during the Chalisa famine, the Dal Khalsa ensured that no Rakhi paying village in the Punjab ever suffered from hunger or thirst. Its missiles roamed far and wide, pillaging non Khalsa territories to feed the subjects of the Khalsa state, often criticizing those who they pillaged for being weak and supporting the rape of Punjab and its resources. Here is another vital factor. The so called victims of these raids our liberal idiots shed tears over were not innocent in the eyes of the Dal Khalsa or the Guru Panth Khalsa. They were equally guilty because they were also recipients of the plunder their overlords looted from Punjab. Rather than exercise any ethical self restraint and vocally denounce their overlords, they enjoyed the rape of Punjab. This was the justification the Dal Khalsa had, and hey, we at the Sikh Renaissance wholeheartedly agree with it. Now, interesting, isn't it, that these liberal clowns would go around boycotting all these brands and governments for actually, you know, supporting Israel, supposedly supporting Israel, which is supposedly doing a genocide of the Palestinians. But when it comes to a similar logic of the Dal Khalsa, that they were punishing the very people who were making the plunder of Punjab possible, that suddenly these liberals turn tail and take the opposing side. No, this was a protection racket. Oh no, this was gangsterism. Well, what the fuck are you doing with your cancel culture? That seems pretty similar, but also pretty unjustifiable. Because let's be honest, if it wasn't for Western rules and regulations, these liberals would pretty much be killing all the people who do not agree with them on the Palestine issue or whatever other gender bender issue they bring up. Now, Banga adds another interesting fact here based on her readings of contemporary non-Sikh sources. So once again, her words, and this is directly addressed to those people who vilify Raakhi. Without justification, Raakhi has been equated with Chauth and interpreted as blackmail or tribute. Some of the Sikh chiefs did levy kharaj. Now, this is the Persian term for blackmail from independent or semi autonomous chiefs. But it is wrong to apply the word Raakhi to cover such situations. The term blackmail may be used with some justification only for those outlying territories into which the Sikh Sardars led excursions from time to time without eventually occupying them. Raakhi, which literally means protection, signified essentially the Sikh chief's claim to a part of the produce from the land in return for protection afforded against all other claimants. Banga does provide evidence of when the Dal Khalsa resorted to blackmail, but again, this was justified. Regions that were hostile to the Sikhs were constantly raided and weakened through Raakhi that served as a means of economic warfare. This was forced Raakhi, sure, and basically, an example of this would be when the Dal Khalsa went after Jammu and Kashmir. These regions' rulers were forced to militarily retreat while the Sikhs imposed and collected Raakhi from their subjects. The humiliation and emasculation of non Sikhs was complete. All this is found in Banga's study agrarian system of the Sikhs. Now, if one area paid Rakhi to one Khalsa Sardar, the other Khalsa Sardars would not attack it. This was basically a rule of thumb. So the whole Dal Khalsa used this taxation. Now, compare that with the Maratha Chauth. Besam, Kulkarni, Sardesai, Gordon, and Sarkar. All of them are prominent Maratha historians. Other than Gordon, the others are Sanatan Vedic Hindus. All of them basically say the same thing. As soon as the Marathas acquired any territory, they demanded Chauth from it. Chauth, in a few words, was not a guarantee that the Marathas would protect you. It was a means of buying them off, that they would not attack you or loot you as long they had access to your material for plunder and sating themselves and your woman for sex in the form of, Chauth. So here was your option. Your wives and daughters got raped by Sanatan Vedic Hindu Marathas. You forfeited your materials and wealth. If you defied the Marathas, you got hariyommed and died. If a foreign aggressor attacked, there was no guarantee that the Marathas would protect you. Now compare that with Rakhi. So actually no, who exactly was doing the protection racket? Liberal Sikhs won't answer this one. So let's move on to the Jizya, their favorite minority, the Sullah's taxation system. Sulle are probably listening to this episode thinking, shit, we might actually survive this one, but no. Some remarks from anthropologist and professor of the Quran, Walter Short. In Islamic law, however, this is simply not the case. The life of a Muslim is considered superior to that of a non Muslim. So much so that whilst a non Muslim killing a Muslim would be executed, the reverse would not occur. This is despite the fact that murder is normally considered a capital offense in Islam, with regular executions in most Muslim states. This inequity is also demonstrable in the blood rate paid to non Muslims, where murder or injury has occurred, which is half that of a Muslim. Effectively, this ruling means that a Muslim need not fear the usual retribution for murder if he kills a non Muslim. The law deliberately and consciously does not protect non Muslims as it does Muslims. The position of Islamic law is not that human life is sacred, but that Muslim life is so. Now, continuing forward. And the American Revolution, because he's using it as a representative to compare Islam against, the American Revolution was fought on the principle no taxation without representation. The idea being that constitutional equality was a precondition for the sovereign exercise of levying taxes. The only basis for different levels of taxation is a socio-economic distinction, but even here the tax is identical in character, is levied without regard for one's communal origins. The principle of distinction in progressive taxation is ability to pay. The tax imposed does not punish a businessman for his success. Refusal to pay will result in fines or imprisonment, but never execution. Furthermore, the tax he pays grants him entitlement to the full protection of the state, and thus full and equal citizenship. The goal of the tax is the same with everyone, the enabling of the state to provide for the security and well being of all its citizens. This is not the case with the jizya, which is a tax that the dhimmi uniquely had to pay, and the dhimmi is the non Muslim. It has its origins in Surah Toba 929, where it is explicitly revealed as a sign of the subjugation of conquered non Muslims. Hence, the tax is clearly a tribute and a sign of subjection, in no way equivalent to the alms tax zakat. Yusuf Ali's comment on the jizya clarifies this, and Yusuf Ali is a great Muslim commentator and a Muslim saint. So, jizya, the root meaning is compensation. The derived meaning, which became the technical meaning, was a poll tax levied from those who did not accept Islam, but were willing to live under the protection of Islam and were thus tacitly willing to submit to its ideals being enforced in the Muslim state. There was no amount permanently fixed for it. It was an acknowledgement that those whose religion was tolerated would then, in their turn, not interfere with the preaching and progress of Islam. Imam Shafi suggests 1 dinar per year, which would be the Arabian gold dinar of the Muslim states. The tax varied in amount and there were exemptions for the poor, for females and children, according to Abu Hanifa, but this was not always the case. Hanifa was basically lying for slaves and for monks and hermits. Being a tax on able bodied males of military age, it was in sense a commutation for military service. But now, Short comes out and says that this is the basic definition, but this is a vital basic definition because this is the one most Muslims use to conceal the jizya. But this basically shows, right, what Yusuf Ali's comment shows is that at the end of the day, the jizya is a means of subjection. And when it says that it is a way of, acknowledging that the person paying it would not actually interfere with the preaching and progress of Islam, what that means is you will publicly not practice your religion or ask for any rights to be given to your religion, no matter what the Muslims do to your sacred sites and scriptures. So if they do biadbi, that is their allowance by Allah. You can't do anything because you're paying jizya. So it is a compensation. And why is it a compensation? Because if you do not accept Islam, you're hurting the Sullahs, pedophile worshippers' feelings. So you have to give them compensation for hurting their feelings, right? It's basically like someone breaking into your house and then accusing you of theft and getting you arrested. So, and yadin, literally from the hand, has been variously interpreted. So this is another definition of jizya. The hand being the symbol of power and authority. I accept the interpretation in token of willing submission. The jizya was thus partly symbolic and partly a commutation for military service, but as the amount was insignificant and the exemptions numerous, its symbolic character predominated. Now, this is another argument Short says that Muslims made. But at the end of the day, in token of willing submission, this basically is the definition he's taking because it includes the word submission. So you are submitting to the Muslim state by saying, I'm paying you a jizya, I'm submitting to you, I will be your dhimmi, I will be your slave, please bless my life. not a slave in the sense of what Ali Yusuf is saying, and that is a sex slave or someone who's actually made a servant type of a slave. This is a state slave, mostly like a, say, a prisoner class, a hostage class. So Abu al-Mawdadi, Quranic exeget and founder of the Islamist Pakistani group Jamiat al-Islami, was quite unapologetic about jizya. And now this is very vital because Abul actually takes all the definitions, synthesizes them, and provides what the true purpose of the jizya is. The Muslim should feel proud of such a humane law as that of jizya, for it is obvious that a maximum freedom that can be allowed to those who do not adopt the way of Allah but chose to tread the ways of error is that they should be tolerated to lead the life they like. Now, of course, he's lying here because the bullshit here is that they cannot lead the life they like unless it's behind closed door. He interprets the Quranic imperative to jihad as having the aim of subjugating non Muslims to force them to pay the jizya as the defining symbol of their subjection. So, Jews and the Christians should be forced to pay jizya in order to put an end to their independence and supremacy so that they should not remain rulers and sovereigns in the land. But as Short describes, this is the main purpose of jizya, even where Sikhs and Hindus are concerned. These powers should be wrested from them by the followers of the true faith, that is Islam, who should assume the sovereignty and lead others towards the right way. So, the consequence of this is that in an Islamic state, specifically the Khilafah, non Muslims should be denied government posts since the state exists for the Muslims who alone are true citizens, whilst the non Muslims are merely conquered residents, and the jizya signifies this. That is why the Islamic State offers them protection. If they agree to live as zimmis by paying jizya, but it cannot allow that they should remain supreme rulers in any place and establish wrong ways and establish them on others. As this state of things inevitably produces chaos and disorder, it is the duty of the true Muslims to exert their utmost to bring an end to their wicked rule and bring them under a righteous order. Differences of taxation demonstrate distinctions in citizenship. As a symbol of subjection, it signifies that the state is not really the common property of all its permanent residents, but only the Muslims. The non Muslims are conquered outsiders. It demonstrates their inferior condition. It also punishes them for their disbelief in Islam. Islamic law makes it very clear that the jizya is punitive in character. Further, it is to be levied with humiliation. Hence, it is in no way comparable to Western tax systems. Even progressive taxation is not a punishment for economic success, nor is any tax specifically humiliating in character. This illustrates that essentially in an Islamic state, the non Muslims are in a worse situation than prisoners out on parole. Since they're still being punished, they're not considered good law abiding citizens, however exemplary their conduct, but rather criminals given day leave. Their crime is their faith. Moreover, their crime is capital in nature. They deserve death. This demonstrates the unique character of the jizya text. Unlike Western taxes, payment does not grant equality and liberty to the payee, but rather merely permission for another tax period to live. Failure to pay it results in death. Again, it is rather analogous to a convict on parole regularly visiting the police station or parole officer to register. This is different from the case of someone in the West who refuses to pay his tax for whatever reason. He is punished, though it must be stated not by execution for breaking the law. The reverse is true with the jizya. The tax itself is punishment, and the payee lives in the permanent condition of being punished for his faith until he converts. Essentially, non Muslims live under a permanent death threat. So now Short is actually using the Western model to compare jizya against, but the sentiment behind his words, the explanation, is pretty much self explanatory. The jizya is paid to purchase the right to exist until or unless you run out of money, and then either you die or either you convert to pedophile worshipping. The Sulla lie, it is for the upkeep of the infidel, but in reality, it is to weaken the infidel. As pedophile worshippers, they don't pay it. Those who don't submit to their so called holy pedophile Muhammad are forced to. So compare that with Raakhi. Everyone paid their share and had access to the protection offered by the Dal Khalsa. Now, which state would you rather live under? The Sikh one allegedly running some protection racket, as the liberal idiot Sikhs claim? or the Sulla Jizya state, whose barbarity they deny in the name of supporting Palestine and Paichara. As for who started Raakhi, it can safely be stated that it was the brainchild of Guru Gobind Singh Ji, who gave it to Baba Banda Singh Bahadur. There was surely a means of taxation placed upon Sikhs and non Sikhs once the Guru Panth Khalsa started conquering non-Sikh areas to build a Sikh state. It didn't entirely fall out of disuse in the post Banda Singh era because any regions Sikhs dominated from their jungle strongholds always had to pay a tax of sorts. In due time, Nawab Kapur Singh, as the second generalissimo of the Panth after Baba Banda Singh, expanded it. Now we know that Nawab Kapur Singh passed away in October 1753 due to his old bullet wound catching up with him, but he had already achieved several foundation milestones by this point that later furnished the Sikh Empire after his demise. So, 1. He united the Sikhs into 11 missals, the collective of which was the Dal Khalsa. 2. He established fortresses throughout Punjab and made the Panth militarily strong in the form of the Tarna Dal. 3. He furnished a religio-political body to take Panthik decisions, look after the Khalsa Panchayats and guard Rahat and Gurdwaras in the form of the Buddha Dal. 4. He made Raakhi more widespread and its collection efficient, ensuring that the money and/or resources collected were wisely spent for the Panth's betterment. 5. He regularized the Sarbat Khalsas, and the Sarbat Khalsa, held after his demise, consecrated his legacy by making Raakhi a permanent fixture of the growing Sikh state, and this was the financial secret to the Sikhs falling and rising again and again like a phoenix before they finally liberated Punjab and gave it a form as the Sikh Empire. So even if Raakhi was a protection racket, say we accept it for argument's sake, it was one of the keys to forming the Sikh Empire that the liberal asshole Sikhs love to kang on. Oh, look how secular our empire was. Oh, look how utopian it was. Yeah, too bad it was all built on what you call a protection racket. And this is the reality of history that can never be undone. So again, the lesson is there. If you want Khalsa Raj, you require taxation. Taxation to build your own state while weakening the enemies. This is how sovereignties are built and protected. Not through dal wale karchi or good vibes. Through Shastar and Raakhi. Now, if anyone wants further explanations and breakdowns of the Shabads we use, please feel free to subscribe to our Substack that is linked in the episode descriptions of our every episode. If you want to talk with us, you can send us a DM on Instagram. And if you want to follow us on YouTube, please don't forget to follow, like, and subscribe. And also, please comment because that tells us what we should be doing in the future and what you want from us more. Until next time, Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
सवैया दुत जिते इन्हीं के प्रसाद इन्हीं के प्रसाद सुदान करे अक अवगटार इन्हीं के प्रसाद इन्हीं की कृपा पुण्य धाम भरे इन्हीं के प्रसाद सो विद्यालय इन्हीं की कृपा सब संत मरे नहीं की कृपा के सने हम हैं नहीं पोसो गरीब